Welcome to the Shorten Anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Ruler, Season 1, Episode 3. Inside the courtyard, Mu Chen's body stood up straight. His palms bent slightly and a dark spiritual energy gathered quickly within his palms. A faint and sharp fluctuation came out from it. Mu Chen sensed the spiritual energy within his palms. He could feel that subtle changes were happening within it. In the next moment, his eyes suddenly froze for a moment, and the gentle, dark spiritual energy within his palms suddenly trembled violently. It was like dropping a few water droplets into a boiling pan. Within that quaking vibration, the spiritual aura fluctuations also rapidly increased. Mu Chen's palms trembled slightly. He could feel that the spiritual energy was speedily amplifying. 1 level, 3 levels, 5 levels, 8 levels. When the spiritual energy had amplified to the 9th level, the vibrations within his hand became even more intense, and there were signs that the spiritual energy was escaping his control. It's only the 9th level. This isn't enough. Mu Chen frowned as he wrinkled his brow slightly. He could faintly feel that a wild horse-like spiritual energy was about to explode outwards. The 13th level. The black spiritual energy covered Mu Chen's palm. He solemnly looked at it. At the next moment, he moved his hand violently and bent all but 2 fingers. He then stabbed at the stone pillar in front of him at lightning speed. The sound of the wind breaking could be heard. Common tier middle rank attack spiritual art. Bone shatter finger. Mu Chen's 2 fingers had penetrated the stone pillar deeply. Cracks began to appear from where his finger had stabbed into. Mu Chen stared at the cracks as he retracted his fingers from within. He muttered to himself, 13th level. He nodded. He is only at the starting line for the Great Pagoda art, yet he was already able to amplify his spiritual energy by 13 levels. It was enough to prove how powerful the Great Pagoda art is, and Mu Chen could sense it that the amplification would only increase as he gets more skilled in it. The Great Pagoda art is at least a spiritual tier, high-rank spiritual art. Mu Chen grinned. The item left behind by his mother really isn't something ordinary. It was probably difficult to find a spiritual tier, high-rank spiritual art within the entire northern spiritual realm. However, this spiritual art was quite difficult to train in. Mu Chen was confident in his cultivation talent. But even so, it would still be difficult to train in this Great Pagoda art. However, I do not lack time, Mu Chen muttered and immediately clapped his hands as he turned back to return to his home. It looks like he must put all his effort into training this Great Pagoda art. Not far away from the courtyard, Mu Feng witnessed the events that happened. He could not help but let out a smile. Within that smile, you could see that he was quite satisfied. Little Mu's cultivation talent truly is outstanding. I had once trained in the Great Pagoda art before, but I was only able to the first batch of spiritual energy to circulate through after 5 days. And the first batch of spiritual energy only reached the 7th level of amplification. That boy actually successfully trained in it within half a day, and the level of amplification was that shocking. He really hurt my pride. Although he said this, Mu Feng could not conceal the prideful and delighted feelings within his eyes. Oh ho ho, little Mu's talent is truly amazing. He would definitely be someone that far surpasses the outdated fellows like us in the future. Zhou Ye also smiled as he nodded his head. His voice held a bit of longing. That's right. The northern spiritual realm may seem very significant to us, but for little Mu, it is way too small. In the next few days, Mu Chen focused all his efforts on training the Great Pagoda art. The boy may occasionally look like he was lazy, but deep down inside, he was extremely stubborn. It was this stubbornness that allowed him to have a distinguished reputation within the spiritual road. In the end, he even caused the massive event, which even numerous geniuses were stunned about. By focusing all his efforts, the spiritual energy within Mu Chen's aura sea had rapidly become thicker in just 7 short days. He was able to obtain a deeper insight regarding about the Great Pagoda art. However, it seems that he was still some distance before he reached the foundation level. This made him let out a sound of disapproval. The Great Pagoda art was truly something extraordinary. As his training in the Great Pagoda art was going well, Mu Chen relaxed a bit. Then he began to multitask and searched through numerous scrolls to find a few suitable attack spiritual arts for him to learn. Although he has strengthened the base of his spiritual energy, It is still essential to have a few attack spiritual arts to enhance his combat abilities. And Liu Yang was not an ordinary person as well. He is ranked first in the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class. This was enough to prove just how powerful he is. At the same time, his father was the Liu territory's lord. The Liu territory is the strongest territory within the Northern Spiritual Realm. It is even slightly stronger than the Mu territory. They often had many disputes with the Mu territory over the past few years and did not like each other. Although the Liu territory could not extend their reach to the Northern Spiritual Academy, they would still be able to give the best support to Liu Yang. However, was it really that easy to step on Mu Chen? Even the numerous geniuses within the spiritual road couldn't do that. A mere Liu Yang was far from being able to. At the training ground filled with stone blocks, a figure caused the dust to scatter around. Within his hands, a dark spiritual energy was constantly rotating, and it emitted faint fluctuations. Only 2 of his fingers weren't bent. Under the dark spiritual energy, an extremely sharp black stab landed onto a block of stone. Kacha! The shattered rock pieces exploded outwards, and cracks quickly spread through the block of stone. Within the boy's black eyes, a cold atmosphere passed through. The 2 fingers that were deep inside the block of stone moved violently, and with a muffled ringing sound, the waist-sized block was directly pierced through. The block of stone shattered. The boy did not stop and changed his hands from just fingers to a palm. With a faint sound of thunder, the dark spiritual energy surged through and he hit a stone block using his backhand. The moment the palm landed onto the stone block, the boy stood on just one leg. The other leg lashed out with power at another block of stone. Bang! Boom! The 2 muffled sounds rang out. 2 stone blocks shattered and crashed straight down. The gravel from it flew off to the open space. The boy slowly lowered his leg and maintained a calm atmosphere. The dark spiritual energy within his palms quietly dispersed. Clap, clap. Sounds of applause rang out from the side. Mu Chen looked and saw Mu Feng standing outside of the training ground with a smile. He was quite satisfied with the performance that Mu Chen had done earlier. It was like a tempest. The killing intent was hidden within the sharpness. It was in no way inferior to those his men that had honed it through battles of life and death. It looks like his son did not waste the year when he entered the spiritual road. Dad, Mu Chen patted the dust off his arm and walked towards Mu Feng. Are you returning to the Northern Spiritual Academy tomorrow? Mu Feng asked with a smile. Mu Chen nodded. If you are able to pass through the competition this time, you should be able to advance to the heaven class of the Northern Spiritual Academy. At that time, you will be qualified to compete for a place within the 5 great academies. Mu Feng patted Mu Chen's shoulder as he spoke with a smile. A place within the 5 great academies, huh? Mu Chen stretched his waist and a smile emerged on his face. Dad, relax. I will definitely obtain that place. Northern Spiritual City, a city that was born because of the Northern Spiritual Academy. The city is basically like the Northern Spiritual Academy, and it maintains absolute neutrality within the Northern Spiritual Realm. Furthermore, the one in control of this place is the Northern Spiritual Academy. This is why none of the disputes within the Northern Spiritual Realm would spread over here. Thus, the Northern Spiritual City is a bustling location. Aside from a few cities in the major territories, it could be considered as one of the top cities within the Northern Spiritual Realm. As the Northern Spiritual City was born due to the Northern Spiritual Academy, it was naturally a heavenly-like location for the students of the Northern Spiritual Academy. In this city, very few individuals would go against the Northern Spiritual Academy students, even without mentioning about the status of the Northern Spiritual Academy. After all, many of the students that came to train at the Northern Spiritual Academy would have some sort of a background. Furthermore, the sons and daughters of various territory lords would be among them. It would not be a pleasant thing if they offended these youths. When Mu Chen stepped out of the transfer spiritual array, he saw the scene of a bustling city. He rubbed his head, which was slightly dizzy due to the transfer, and then looked at the transfer spiritual array behind him. The arrangement of the transfer spiritual array is extremely troublesome. There are only a handful of large cities that had the ability to position it. It was obvious that the Northern Spiritual City had the ability to do so with the Northern Spiritual Academy's power. Mu Chen walked away from the transfer spiritual array and passed through a lively street. He went straight to the Northern Spiritual Academy, located at the center of the city. On both sides of the street, there were many stores. Amongst them, the spiritual arts vendors shouted out. However, Mu Chen did not have the slightest idea of staying there. His father is one of the 9 territory lords within the northern spiritual realm. His collection would naturally be decent. Thus, the spiritual arts from these places naturally would not enter Mu Chen's sights. After turning around a couple of street corners, the magnificent Northern Spiritual Academy could be seen. Many groups of students from the Northern Spiritual Academy could be seen on the streets. As the boys and girls gathered together, sounds of laughter could be heard. It was filled with youthful vitality. In his surroundings, many people would gaze toward Mu Chen. A couple beautiful girls would send a curious and shy gaze towards him. Within the Northern Spiritual Academy, Mu Chen could be considered as a celebrity. Without mentioning anything else, it would already cause others to tremble slightly within their hearts just by the fact that he had once obtained the qualifications to the spiritual road. After all, he was the only one to have obtained a spot for it. Although they did not know why Mu Chen was kicked out after being in the spiritual road for 1 year, but how could a person be ordinary if they obtained an entry for the spiritual road? Mu Chen did not care about the gazes that were thrown to him. He even smiled back. He had a handsome appearance, a gentle and brilliant smile, and eyes that were as black as the evening sky. Although he was roughly the same age as the other students, he possesses a unique disposition that the other innocent teenagers did not have. It was this disposition, coupled with the comforting face, that made the girls' cheeks slightly hot as they looked at him in secret. All of a sudden, a commotion rang out in the street in front. Many students quickly dispersed and a couple figures with a depressed expression ran over. They looked anxiously at the surroundings and an astonished expression appeared shortly after. "Brother Mu!" Several surprised shouts escaped from their mouth. "Luodong, what are you guys doing?" Mu Chen saw a few familiar people and was slightly bewildered. They were in the same cultivation class as him, and their daily relationship was quite good. "Brother Mu, hurry and help out Su Ling. He was hit by Mu Yuan." The boy named Luodong quickly responded. "Mu Yuan?" The surrounding students were shocked when they heard that name. The one that was number 2 in the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class, Mu Yuan? He was an aggressive fellow who was only slightly weaker than Liu Yang. Why would Su Ling dare provoke him? "What happened?" Mu Chen frowned. Su Ling could be considered to be his best friend within the Northern Spiritual Academy. A while ago, Mu Yuan came over to talk about nonsense. He said that Brother Mu would definitely lose tomorrow. Su Ling could not endure it and said a few things back at him. Then he was hit by Mu Yuan. "The West Branch really is too arrogant," Luodong said bitterly. Mu Chen's lip creased slightly. This made Luodong, who was beside him, shocked. He was quite familiar with Mu Chen, and naturally knew that once Mu Chen did this action, he was probably quite angry. "Bring me there," Mu Chen said. Luodong and the others were stunned. They quickly said, "Brother Mu, we should still find a teacher first. There are many people over by Mu Yuan's side. Zhuidong, who you defeated before, and the Xiao Kun, who is ranked number 6 in the Earth class, is also..." "It's all right. Lead the way." Mu Chen smiled and gently patted Luodong's shoulder. Seeing Mu Chen smile, Luodong and the others looked at each other. They immediately bit their teeth and nodded. At most, they would only be hit. But how could they allow those guys from the West Branch to think that the East Branch were all softies? Several people surrounded Mu Chen as they headed over there. Only a few stunned students were left on the street. However, they soon recovered and stared at the direction that Mu Chen and the others have departed for with a fiery passion. They quickly followed them and flew off. Judging from Mu Chen's earlier appearance, could he be planning to pick a fight against 3 violent individuals within the top 10 of the West Branch Earth class by himself? This was quite an explosive event. A muffled sound rang out and a figure was blown away fiercely. His body stopped only after it left a long trace on the ground. The people from the East Branch seemed to be bursting with too much self-confidence now. Even an unknown person would dare to yell in front of me, Mu Yuan. "I really want to know just who gave you guys that confidence." A boy in black clothes crossed his arms and sneered at the 10 helpless individuals on the ground. The one that was leading those 10 men was Su Ling. At this moment, he was staring at the boy in black clothes as he gritted his teeth. Behind the boy in black clothes were 2 similarly aged boys. They too had a sneer on their face. They could not conceal the arrogance within their eyes. Surrounding them was a circle of students. However, they did not dare to speak. It was obvious that there weren't many who would dare to provoke these 3 individuals. "Bah, Mu Yuan, stop acting so proud. You were lucky that Brother Mu wasn't here today. Otherwise, your 2nd rank in the Earth class would disappear," Su Ling said in anger. Mu Yuan raised an eyebrow, as if he was challenging him, and a boy behind him let out a cold harumph. He was the one that lost to Shorten. That guy has a bit of skill, but I'm not afraid of him. Oh ho ho, I can't wait until tomorrow when the competition between the two branches is over. The East branch would behave themselves then. Mu Yuan grinned and said, Brother Liu would let him know that it would be better off if he remained a low profile. Within the Northern Spiritual Academy, we, the West branch, is the strongest. I really can't wait to see his appearance when that guy loses, Shudong said with a sneer. Only before that, I think I want to take care of you East branch trashes. Mu Yuan interweaved his fingers and gently gripped it. It issued out a clear cracking sound and he headed towards Su Ling and the others with an evil expression. Noticing that Mu Yuan refused to stop, Su Ling and the other looked slightly pale. He soon shouted out, Let's desperately fight against him! Fight! These boys were still a bit courageous. If they showed no resistance in front of such a big crowd, it would be too shameful. They gritted their teeth and lifted their body as they charged towards Mu Yuan. A group of guys who haven't even advanced to the spiritual movement stage dare to attack me? How overly confident. Mu Yuan laughed as he saw this. A faint spiritual energy rose from his palms. Bang! He stomped heavily on the ground and darted out like an arrow. He jumped over the numerous charging figures and appeared directly in front of the panicking Su Ling. With a sneer, his fist brought a sharp wind, and he smashed directly at Su Ling's face. Su Ling stared at the swift wind coming from Mu Yuan's fist, yet it was simply too late to resist. He could only watch as the fist rapidly became bigger in his eyes. He closed his eyes as if he gave up and thought to himself that it looks like he had to lie down for a few days. Just when he closed his eyes, he seemed to hear a few screams coming from the surroundings. Then a muffled sound rang out, and the blast shook his face a bit. It didn't hurt as much as he imagined. He opened a tiny bit of his eyes and was stunned. A long white arm suddenly appeared from behind him, and it easily stopped the blast of wind coming from Mu Yuan's fist. Su Ling hurriedly turned around. He then saw the boy who made him feel relaxed. Brother Mu! Su Ling shouted in joy. You did a good job. At least you did not disgrace the East Branch's face. Mu Chen smiled at him. Then he looked at Mu Yuan and the others, whose expression changed slightly and said, I was the one that gave them that confidence. Is there a problem? I was the one that gave them that confidence. Is there a problem? When Mu Yuan and the others looked at the smiling boy in front of him, their expressions changed slightly. The sneer that they had in their eyes became a little bit more dignified. Apparently, they still held a bit of fear towards Mu Chen. How arrogant. However, Mu Yuan was the first to recover. He stared at Mu Chen and let out a cold He also advanced to the spiritual movement stage initial phase 7 days ago. The two individuals behind him, Shuidong and Xiao Kun, was also about to advance. What would Mu Chen dare to do when there was such a formation against him? Shuidong and Xiao Kun also quickly thought of this point. A tint of fierceness passed through their eyes, and the fear within them was weakened by a lot. I was only teaching them a little lesson today. In the Northern Spiritual Academy, it isn't the turn of the East Branch to butt in when we, the West Branch, are talking. Mu Yuan clapped his hands and let out a sneer towards Mu Chen. As for you, I think you would not dare to say such words after tomorrow. The surrounding students were all frozen and did not dare let out a sound. They stared at the arrogant Mu Yuan. The group of East Branch students were all furious within their hearts, yet they kept the resentment to themselves. After he said these words, he waved his hand as if he wanted to left together with the others. He had already displayed their authority and power today in order to weaken the authority and power that the East Branch had. Su Ling and the others were extremely angry and clenched their fists. However, the other side had a powerful momentum now. Even if Mu Chen had finally arrived, he would not dare to fight back against him now. I'm going to ask. A sound came from behind them. Mu Yuan and the others paused for a moment and turned back to stare at the boy standing in front of Su Ling. At this moment, Mu Chen had a smile on his face. Are you not intending to apologize before you leave? The surrounding sounds seemed to have become quiet. Many boys and girls stared at the smiling boy in a daze. Although Mu Chen had a brilliant smile on his face, they could feel a sharp chill from it. Su Ling and the others also froze for a moment. Then their face turned red. They did not believe that Mu Chen would still come forward for them when it was like this. Apologize? Mu Yuan's face turned grim. He let out a mocking smile and said, Why? He was used to being arrogant in the Northern Spiritual Academy. Is this guy crazy for asking him to apologize? Looks like it's useless to talk. Mu Chen nodded his head. Without saying anything more, he slowly walked towards Mu Yuan and the others. Mu Yuan and the others stared at the approaching Mu Chen with a dismal expression. Their eyes made contact for a moment, and they could see a hint of coldness within those eyes. Within the Northern Spiritual Academy, Mu Chen had always remained relatively low profile. Aside from defeating Zhuai Dong, he had not done any remarkable deeds. However, no students within the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class would dare to underestimate him. Even unruly people like Mu Yuan would still fear him. How could a person who qualified to participate in the spiritual road be an ordinary person? That's why. Do it! A cry came out from Mu Yuan's mouth. The spiritual energy violently surged through his arms. He stomped onto the ground and charged directly to Mu Chen. Behind him, Shuidong and Xiaokun followed him and kept to his side. These movements had quite the chemistry. A commotion broke out from the surroundings. It was evident that they did not imagine Mu Yuan and the others to be so straightforward. They did not hesitate to let out a combined attack. Moreover, they were all aggressive individuals within the top 10 ranks of the West Branch Earth class. Mu Yuan was the strongest out of the three. He had already advanced to the spiritual movement stage initial phase. Thus, his offensive was also the most ferocious. The spiritual energy wrapped around his palms and the winds coming from it were like blades. He hacked angrily at Mu Chen. However, just when the palm winds were about to hit Mu Chen, he gently took half a step to the side and his body passed by Mu Yuan. The eyebrows on his handsome face were slightly lowered, and just like a sharp sword become unsheathed, the originally gentle face instantly became cold and aggressive. He did not directly go against Mu Yuan, and instead went straight to the Zhuidong and Xiaokun, who were slightly behind Mu Yuan, as he avoided Mu Yuan. The dark spiritual energy surrounded his fingers as he opened up his palm. A sharp sound of the wind could be faintly heard as the spiritual energy surged. He let off a smack towards Shuidong and Xiaokun. Shuidong and Xiaokun were surprised by this move of Mu Chen. However, they did not have any time to avoid it. They immediately bit their teeth and fired off a punch with all their strength. As long as they were able to stop Mu Chen for an instant, Mu Yuan would be able to turn back and aid them. When that happens, Mu Chen would be completely surrounded and open to attacks. Shuidong and Xiaokun had a ranking within the West Branch Earth class. Naturally, they weren't just any ordinary individuals. However, they still slightly misjudged the strength of the boy in front of them and the proficiency in his attacks. When the two fists exploded outwards, Mu Chen's palm suddenly skimmed through the surface of their punches. It violently went further down and landed on their wrists. He then pulled powerfully. The two of them had their bodies fly forward due to being pulled and the momentum of their punch. Their bodies became unstable. Mu Chen's palm wind passed through their arms, and like a snake charging out of a hole, it landed directly on their chest without any mercy. A deep sound rang out. Zhuidong and Xiaokun's bodies suddenly flew backwards when they let out an astonished expression. They landed heavily on the ground and issued out a scream. The clothes in front of their chest were completely destroyed. Just by exchanging blows once, Zhuidong and Xiaokun lost with ease. After Zhuidong and Xiaokun let out a cry, the surrounding students finally recovered. They could not help but grin carelessly. Wasn't it too fast? Mu Chen! An angry roar came from behind. When Mu Yuan noticed this scene, he was so angry that his face turned red. He did not imagine that Mu Chen would actually avoid him and take care of Zhuidong and Xiaokun first. Flame Palm! A fiery red spiritual energy erupted above Mu Yuan's palms. As the spiritual energy rose, it was like a fire and made the air become a little bit hotter. The surrounding students exclaimed loudly. Is this the strength of the second rank of the West Branch Earth class? Mu Chen also turned around at this moment. He stared at the fierce Mu Yuan as he approached. His fingers clenched into a fist. There wasn't the slightest evasive action done, and a punch surrounded by a dark spiritual energy was fired out. The fist and palm bombarded heavily with each other. A surge of air expanded from it. The red and dark color intersected. However, Mu Yuan's face instantly turned blood red. His body violently trembled, and with a poochie sound, he spat out fresh blood from his mouth. He staggered a few steps backwards and finally sat down on his butt. With just one move, the victory was decided. Although they were both at the spiritual movement stage initial phase, but it was evident that Mu Chen's spiritual energy was more condensed and sharp. Mu Yuan could not compare to it at all. Shuidong and Xiaokun, who was beaten to the ground earlier, let out an astonished expression. Mu Yuan had the strength of a spiritual movement stage initial phase. Why couldn't he even receive one of Mu Chen's punches? How is this possible? Mu Yuan also had a look of disbelief as he sat on the ground awkwardly. He did not even remember to wipe off the blood from his mouth. Brother Mu is amazing. Su Ling and the others were completely stunned. Soon they let out a face filled with ecstasy. They did not expect Mu Chen would still be able to achieve an overwhelming advantage when he was fighting against three of them. However, Mu Chen had a calm expression. He stared at the awkward Mu Yuan and smiled. Now, can you apologize? Mu Yuan's face changed slightly. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Dream on!" Mu Chen seemed to have expected that he would say that. The smile on his face became even more splendid. He nodded his head and strode off towards Mu Yuan. A dark black spiritual energy slowly appeared once again on his palms. Mu Yuan stared at Mu Chen, who was approaching. He did not know why he could feel a chill when he looked at Mu Chen's magnificent smile. Mu Chen approached Mu Yuan. The dark black spiritual energy above his palm became more and more dense. However, when his foot stopped in front of Mu Yuan, a gentle clapping sound rang out beside him. Oh ho ho, as expected from a person that had participated in the spiritual road before. However, your actions seem like you do not care about the West Branch at all? Mu Chen tilted his head. He looked at the crowd as it separated. From there, a figure slowly came forward with a smile. When the nearby students saw him, they could not help but take a step back, and fear appeared within their eyes. Under the fearful gazes, the boy stood in front of Mu Chen. He had a somewhat handsome appearance. However, the corner of his lips revealed a sense of stubbornness as well as pride that could not be concealed. At this moment, he crossed his arms, and within the gaze that stared at Mu Chen, there was a disposition as if he was looking at his prey. It was the #1 person of the West Branch Earth class, Liu Yang. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.